All right. Today's topic is education. Or should we say education hell? So I don't know if there's anything that I talk about today that will be sort of on the midterm exam. So let's just say we just talk about this as an issue, but not necessarily as an exam item. Okay? I'm sort of giving it away, right? So you don't really have to worry anything about this particular lecture notes as far as your midterm goes. Anyway, I have a real fancy subtitle, Education Frenzy in Korea, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it really, this captures the essence of education in Korea. Because there's something good, right? Because as you may know, in international comparisons, Koreans do relatively better than most other countries. I mean, that would be the good side. And also, education played a big role in Korea's transformation from one of the poorest countries in the world to one of the more developed economies of the world, right? And the ugly side would be, because of the pressure of education, we have a very high suicide rate among teenagers, right? And largely due to education pressure, okay? So we'll talk about each one of these, the good, bad, and the ugly aspects of education frenzy in Korea. So here is the lecture outline. Introduction, education, facts, reasons for education fever in Korea. Maybe this could have been a good item for midterm exam, but I already said it, right? And I turn to the positive consequences of Koreans' strong zeal for education, then talk about the negative impact of education fever, and that's about it. Anyway, I want to show you a short video by BBC News. I hope it plays. All right.
South Korea, where a child's life revolves around education. Regular school is followed in the evening by private school, a double shift of schooling, making them some of the most formidable pupils in the world. 16-year-old Haimin goes to school in Gangnam in Seoul, made famous by the pop star Psy. After school, she leaves with her brother. But far from relaxing at home, she sets off again for her second round of study. Even the little ones do a double shift. Long after what might be considered bedtime in the UK, these tots are still working.
72가지인데 여기가 이제 경우수가 72가지인데
Haimin then spends hours here at the hagwon or private crammer, just like the great majority of Korean children.
I get tired usually, but I can forget about my hardships when I see my results because they're kind of good.
Haimin gets home after 11, having spent a mammoth 13 hours in study. It's bed at 2 a.m. and then up again at 6:30 to do it all over again.
Korea has few natural resources. We only have people. So anyone who wants to be successful really has to stand out. As a mother, I don't feel comfortable about this, but it's the only thing she can do to achieve her dream.
The result of this non-stop study is children who are fantastic at tests. We set these 15 and 16-year-olds some GCSE maths questions. They did them in half the expected time, with most of them getting full marks.
I like going to school because there are many good friends and good teachers.
Sometimes I'm very tired, like exhausted, but I don't mind because I'm studying now to do what I want to do in future.
For the economy, this huge investment in education has taken the country in just 2 generations from mass illiteracy to technological powerhouse. Korean brands are internationally famous. The country's built itself up with extraordinary single-mindedness since the end of the war with North Korea 60 years ago.
But Korea's success has come at a cost. The pressure on young people is huge, and the suicide rate is the highest of all developed countries. Is this pressurised environment really sustainable?
한국 사회는 아주
I don't think any other country has achieved such rapid growth as South Korea in the past 50 years. We've focused on school achievement, and that's put a lot of people under stress, hence the high suicide rates. We still have a long way to go, but we're doing some soul searching and we're trying to make our people happier.
In many ways, Korea is the envy of the Western world. Ministers in Westminster and beyond look longingly at its education record and are remodelling their own systems to try to compete. But Korea's phenomenal success has come at a real price for its people, a price the country is now gradually starting to weigh up. Rita Chakrabarti, BBC News, Seoul.
Okay, I hope you enjoy the short video. Anyway, so at the danger of repeating what's already been mentioned, as you all know, education in Korea is very important, and that's one of the reasons why Korea is one of the most educated societies in the world. So when you look at the proportion of adults with college education, Korea is in the top 5 to 10. And if you limit that to those between the age of 25 to 34, Korea is number 1. Okay? And again, I'm not boasting about this because it's not a good thing. When you have too many people going to college, you have a problem, sort of unforeseen problems, right? So here we go. South Korea has the 6th most educated populace in the world, with 39% of the population holding a college degree. Okay? Also, South Korea has achieved unparalleled economic development in the 71 years after the Korean War. 71 years, yes. Once an impoverished country predominantly focused on agriculture, the country now stands triumphantly as the 12th largest economy in the world. The exponential growth is mainly a credit to the country's emphasis on education, as Korea has relied on a large pool of able and talented labor force, especially because the country largely lacks such natural resources as oil, coal, and iron, all necessary for industrialization. However, this explosive development has coincided with and given rise to an exceptionally rigorous educational system. The end-all university entrance exam is so critical to students' futures that on Korean SAT exam day, parents crowd churches and temples to pray for their children's success. Offices and the stock market open later so students can go to the exam on time, and airplanes are grounded to reduce the noise. Okay? So when there is a specified time for English listening tests, for example, airplanes do not fly during that period. Okay? Unsurprisingly, students crack under the pressure. South Korea has the highest student suicide rate, and students are the unhappiest among the OECD countries. Okay? Who could blame them, right? If you think of Korean high school students like going to movies on weekend, partying on weekend sometimes, think again. Just never happens to anyone who wants to go to a university. Okay. Well, I have the figure here, and it's too painful to read it, so I'm just gonna skip. It's a really interesting cartoon. Oh, you can't really read it, right? I'll read it for you from right off the monitor. It's a Children's Day. You know, we celebrate Children's Day as a national holiday. Okay? I think it's coming up soon, right? In May. 맞죠? 어린이날, 노는 날. 네. I think it's May 1st. 맞나요? May 5th. May 5th. Anyway, holiday. So the kid goes, it's a Children's Day, right? It's their day, right? He says, let's go to an amusement park. So the father goes, I guess a day off on Children's Day is okay. So he takes out a key and he unshackles this shackle on his kid's ankle. So it says here, private education. So the shackle is private education. Okay? So even on holidays, where do students go? They go to private institutes. Okay? So do they have a day off? Well, they may have a day off or two when they are in kindergarten, maybe elementary school, grade 1, grade 2 maybe, but things get really serious from like grade 5. That's when they're excused from family gatherings, they're excused from family dine-out, they're excused from relatives gathering. Okay? All in the name of education. The question is, what are the characteristics of education in Korea? Why are Koreans fixated on education? What are the positive consequences of Koreans' preoccupation with education? What are the negative consequences of education frenzy in Korea? I'm missing All right, education facts. So these are just for fun, okay? Some facts you may already know about. We have an education system which is quite westernized, 6-3-3-4 system, and I think that's quite almost universal now, right? And education in Korea is mandatory up to grade 12 with no tuition fee. Okay? We actually have introduced the compulsory primary education since 1957, compulsory middle school education since 2004, and since 2021, tuition-free education is being offered for all high school students. So this means until the second semester of 2021, students had to pay tuition for high school education. Okay? So we have finally joined the ranks of developed economies where education up to grade 12 is universally offered for free. And of course, some countries in Europe also offer university education for free, right? How many of you come from countries where college education is free? Hands up. Wow, I envy you guys. Congratulations. You're living in a very good society. Okay. Second characteristic, education in Korea is provided by both public schools and private schools. While primary and secondary education is provided largely by public schools, tertiary education is provided predominantly by private institutions. Now, if I just tell you this, it's not going to make much sense until I show you this slide. Look at this. This is primary school education. You can see how only 1.3% of primary school education is offered by private schools. That jumps to 22% for middle schools and it jumps to about somewhere around 40% for high schools, and look at the college level. Private education accounts for about 85% of all tertiary education in Korea. And I think that's a mark of I don't think you would find this kind of a rate in other developed countries. So I think this is a sort of a remnant or vestige of how Korea, did come from a poor background, meaning if the country was poor enough that it was not able to provide college education to its population for a long time. And it's reflected here. Okay? Third characteristic is this. There is a relatively large number of colleges in Korea. So as of 2021, there are close to 400 colleges in Korea. Excuse me, I could hear you from here. And that means other students could also hear you, okay? Four-year universities, there are close to 200. And two-year colleges, 134. And postgraduate only schools, 45. So altogether, and cyber universities, 23. So altogether about 400 colleges. And just for fun, which country do you think has the largest number of colleges in the world? It's just for fun. Yes, you're right. No, you're right in that US is not. No? Here we go. India is number one with 5,288 universities and colleges. And considering its population, it's not that many, right? Because look at United States. Its population size is like what, 1/5 of India's, but its total is only about what, 1,300 less than the total of India. So the third is Indonesia with 2,595. Fourth is China with 2,565, and so on, right? So Korea is right here. So it's ranked 2, 4, 6, 12th, okay? This was mentioned under gender inequality. More females are enrolling in colleges. So there we go. Since 2009, this has been happening. Although it stopped at 2020, it's still happening. Okay? More women are enrolling in colleges than their male counterparts. Fifth characteristic, decline in the number of students due to record low fertility rate. So this will be discussed more extensively when I get to talk about aging. Okay? So number of high school students, future college students is expected to drop by about 1/3 by 2030 compared to, let's say, 2010. Something like that, right? So universities are already, universities in Korea are already suffering from the low fertility rate. In 2017, 80% of four-year universities failed to fill their admission quotas. Some universities in the countryside failed to even fill half. So, KU does not have to worry about shortage of students, but it's a serious problem for universities that are located outside the capital region. Universities that have low prestige, they're in big trouble. So just to give you a sense of how, the kind of low sort of a birth rate we have, In 1970, there were 1 million births. Okay, that's just, 50 years ago, right? Last year, we had like 230,000 births, drop of more than 75% in just a half century, okay? 6 characteristic is the increases in the number of multicultural students. So here is the total, okay? And the largest number is the students in elementary school, followed by students in middle schools, and lastly, students in high school, okay? But there is something, this is the ratio, right? As of last year, 33.5% of all the students consisted of multicultural children, okay? In case you don't know, we came up with this terminology, multicultural children, to refer to biracial, bi-ethnic children, okay? Anyway, despite an increasing number of multicultural children at school, their college enrollment rate is far lower than the national average, okay? So as you can see here, so this is high school, this is multicultural children, this is Korean student, similar, right? But if you look at the college enrollment rate, 40% for multicultural children, and overall for 71.5% for overall Korean students. Okay, so you can see a significant drop, right? 7th, relatively high cost of college education. The average tuition fee for public universities in Korea is the 5th highest in the world. So we think that we're paying not too much money on tuition. I think we say that because we compare ourselves to the US, right? But just for fun, which country has the world's highest tuition fee for public universities? You're wrong again. You're being too harsh on the US. Anyway, I'm relying on the data that I have. Anyway, it's not the USA. The answer is UK, yes. Amazingly enough, it's UK. It's $12,330, number 1 in the world. Number 2 is the US at $9,212. I think that is for in-state. Anyway, that's an average. You know, average is sometimes misleading, but this is from 2019 and 2020, okay? So Korea is ranked 5th highest, okay? Again, public universities, annual fees. And, I'd like to call on students from Sweden, Slovenia, Poland, Norway, Finland, Denmark, and Turkey for having 0 tuition. Thank you for being a beacon of the world. And here are the top 15 most expensive universities in the world. University of Cambridge, $72,000. Columbia, $65,000. Colgate University, $63,000. Anyway, most of them are in the USA. True capitalist society. Okay? True. Yeah, they're all private. Okay? There's some surprising ones like this, because I never heard of this particular university, or Harvey Mudd College. Have you heard of that college before? What about Sarah Lawrence College? A Landmark college? All right. Anyway, eighth characteristic, Korea boasts one of the world's highest, if not the highest, high school graduation rates. 96.3% of males and 95.3% of females graduate. They receive high school diplomas. And this is from 2021. So here we go. Korea at the top, right? This is from the OECD data. So that's quite reliable, right? And where is the USA? Just as a way of comparison. Oh, I see, right here. So the graduation rate is about 80%. No. 90% for, I think it should be, right? Yeah. All right, ninth characteristic of Korean education, we already talked about this before, right? So as of 2022, so 73.3% of high school graduates move on to college. You know why it's difficult to get comparable data from other countries? You see, we have data that actually look at the proportion of high school graduates who move on to college, because we don't typically have students who take a break. But in the West, they look at college enrollment rate by looking at the college enrollment rate of those between the age of, let's say, 19 to like 34. Because their enrollment in college is more flexible as far as the age goes, whereas ours is more fixed, right? I mean, it's almost like a established pattern, right? That you go to college right after you finish high school. But anyway, you can see how population with tertiary education, 25 to 34-year-olds, Korea is number one. Okay? So this one is for 55 to 64. Korea is not ranked that high, right? So you can see how college education is a recent phenomenon. Okay? Like for people who were born in the 60s, 70s, and even 80s, they didn't get to go to college, either because of poverty or because there were just not enough sort of admission quotas to colleges. Okay? All right, we turn to the second part of today's class, and it's the reasons for the education fever. Before I turn to my own slides, can you think of any reasons why Koreans are so crazy about education? Why are they so fixated on education? They want success. Yes, but it's not really a reason, right? Okay, what did anyone else say something? Yes. Yes, education has become a status symbol, okay, where you have to sort of get a college education to sort of be received or perceived or recognized as a full person. Something like that, okay? Well, I'll get to that with more details later. Anyone else? Yeah? Does that sort of answer this question? Any reasons or factors for Koreans' preoccupation with education? Anyway, yes, the student's neighbor. Okay, I guess that was the answer I was looking for. Confucianism, right? I think that would be like the number one reason, right? I mean, it's if you look at sort of countries like China, Japan, Singapore, same thing. Education is very important, and we all have shared this one thing, right? We're Confucian cultures. Okay, so well, let's see what we have here. Koreans' preoccupation with education spring from 5 factors. One is cultural importance of Confucianism. Second, education as a status symbol. Third, education as a sole means of success. Fourth, discrimination against education, discrimination based on educational credentials. I mean, this may be universal, but let's see if the situation in Korea is unique. Fifth, academic elitism and nepotism of SKY universities. Okay? So, well, let's go through these factors one by one. First, cultural importance of Confucianism. Koreans' overriding concern with education is a direct influence of Confucianism. Confucianism can be understood as a religion of learning. Confucius said that, quote, the only way for the superior man, human, to civilize the people and establish good social customs is through education. A piece of jade cannot become an object of art without chiseling, and a man, I mean, I'm using a direct quote, human cannot come to know the moral law without education, unquote. So, Confucian ideal assumes that good education makes good men, and that good men make good government. Again, quote. Confucianism regards scholarship and aesthetic cultivation as prerequisites for those in official or governing positions. That is why the past dynasties in Korea, as was done in China and for a limited time in Japan, so the individuals who serve in the government, in today's term, civil servants, they were recruited on the basis of passing the rigorous civil service examination. Okay, so this is before the modern system of civil service examination that has been in place in the West, maybe 100 or 200 years ago. But look at this. In China, they had civil service examination as early as the Sui dynasty, 581 to 618. And civil service examination was first implemented into practice in Korea during the Goryeo dynasty in 958. So again, if you think about anything that Korea and China did before what others did, I think one of them is this civil service examination that took place much earlier in these two countries than anywhere else in the world. Okay? As far as, again, civil service examination is concerned. Second, education as a status symbol. Again, we're talking about factors for Koreans' preoccupation with education. And universities degrees are thought of as lifelong stamps of intellectual competency. Over the years, university degree attainment has become the norm, the minimum educational standard which people are expected to attain to be socially recognized. This is how it goes. You know how you know that university degree is taken for granted? When people meet for the first time, they eventually find out three things: one's age, where the person got a degree from, and where the person was born, right? Now, I mean, asking someone where were you born is no problem, right? Because everyone is born somewhere. But two things, right? University degree, because we're talking about a significant proportion of the population with no university degree. So if you're a polite person, you cannot be asking where did you get your degree from? But that's how it became, again, the norm. Okay? And also, how we find out the other person's age? We don't ask, what year were you born? We ask, what year did you enter university? Okay, that's what this is all about. Okay, we take again this university degree for granted. That's why student life of Korea, the student life of Koreans is not complete without their mother actively engaging in their affairs. But mothers with high school diplomas, they're so ashamed. They sort of are actively involved. Because of this. I'm exaggerating, of course, and I'm making sweeping generalization, but that does happen, okay? Because of this. The very reason why college enrollment is so high in Korea is because Korean culture has created a cultural milieu in which an individual becomes a complete, socially acceptable, and socially recognized person only by getting a college degree. So even if you're not, it's a thing to do, right? Even if you're not interested in any particular field, you just go because it's a thing to do. Okay? Because of education sort of having become a status symbol. In other words, Koreans worry that they will not get social recognition just because they don't have a college degree. Third factor or reason why we have this education frenzy is that education is a sole means of success. Koreans strongly believe that one needs to graduate from a university to succeed in Korean society. There's a strong belief in this formula, right? University, job, success. Okay? According to a study in 2022, the number one reason for enrolling in universities was, now if you are asked, why are you in university? Why are you studying? What would be your number one answer? But wouldn't you want to say something like, oh, I want to enhance my knowledge? So this is universal then. Anyway, number one is to get a good job. Maybe it's the proportion that is rather high, right? So to get a job, to develop one's abilities and skills, to avoid discrimination, all right? Something's missing here. Anyway, top three reasons, and then there are other ones, right? It is also true that too many jobs in both public and private sector in Korea require university degrees. You know, I think it's happening in the US where jobs that do not require college degrees, they spell it out, no? They say university, you know, in the past, let's say 10 years ago or 20 years ago, too many jobs had this requirement where applicants must have a college degree. But now they're doing that less, from what I know. I see. Anyway, there's a thing called paper ceiling. The paper ceiling unnecessarily precludes stars. What does star stand for? Workers who are skilled through alternative routes, like, you know, community college, military service, on-the-job experience, rather than bachelor's degree. Well, if you think something, you know, positive is happening in the U.S. where, you know, they're doing away with this degree requirement, we have a long way to go. It's got to be a college degree, and it's got to be a degree from a good university. Yes? As elsewhere, four-year university enrollment is much higher than the enrollment in the two-year colleges. I don't know what the ratio is, but just looking at the number of universities and colleges, you could put the figure at maybe 80 to 20 ratio, right? Anyway, fourth factor why there is education frenzy in Korea, discrimination based on educational credentials. And there are a couple of Korean words, I don't know if you will be able to remember this, just for your general knowledge. There's a thing called 학력. 학력 means level of education. So it's like whether you have a college degree or just high school diploma, right? That's one level of discrimination, okay? Whether you have a college degree or just high school diploma. And then there is what is called 학벌. And it's a discrimination based on where you got your college degree. It's a discrimination based on alma mater. Does that happen in your country? I'm sure it does, but not to the extent of Korea. Yes. Here it's outright favored. Okay? Like openly almost. Okay? So I don't know if there's any. Well, the discrimination that is made between a college degree holder and a high school diploma holder may be universal, but I think it's just simply more intense in Korea. And here's an example. At a company with an 11-degree seniority system, those with a high school diploma start at grade 11, lowest level. Now, with those with a college degree doing the same thing, they start from grade 8. Do you know how long it'll take this guy with a high school diploma, grade 11, to reach grade 8? It'll take 10 years. Okay, you see the kind of discrimination that is, I'm sure it's universal maybe, but it is simply more extensive in Korea. Okay? Let's finish this before we take a break. So, well, university ranking, you know, is universal now, but again, it's more, we attach more meaning and importance to it, okay? So here we go. At the top are sky and a couple of technology universities, right? So this is Post-Tech and KAIST, right? And so this would be the top group, although they made a distinction here. Maybe it's the right distinction. You know how we say sky? From now on, don't say that. Why? Of the sky, Seoul National just stands out. So let's say you have an elite group of 100, about 2/3 are SNU. 1/3 divided between Yonsei University and Korea University. You see, among the top 3 universities, there is also this major division, right? So from now on, don't say sky, say sky. That rightly reflects the distribution of sort of power within this elite group, okay? So this is a slide that shows you how, if you take a survey among Koreans, what is the most painful or important sort of a form of discrimination? Guess what they say? Number 1, education. Okay? Discrimination based on education. Now, it's only 29.6% because you only choose one. But if they were allowed multiple choices, I think the rate would be much higher. Okay? But in the West, what do you get? If same survey, they will say things like race and ethnicity, gender, right? Age, and physical handicap, right? And sexual orientation. Now, the last one, why Koreans are so fixated on education is that, this favoritism shown to alumni or graduates of SKY universities, right? SKY universities, Korean university, they dominate Korean society, politics, economy, and culture. And this is not an exaggeration, okay? You look at the educational background of CEOs of top 500 stock-listed companies, you'll find roughly, 40-50% of them graduates of these 3 universities, okay? And as I already said, among the 3 universities, SNU just stand out, okay? Look at this table. There's a thing called power elite in any society. And in Korea, power elite includes assistants to the president at the presidential palace, ministers and vice ministers, and heads and directors of the administrative departments like Korean CIA and so on, right? Look at this. Right now, this administration, 72 out of 113 power elite, that is 63%, come from 3 universities. 63%. Now, of the total, about half come from SNU. Now do you understand what I meant by sky? Okay? What about last administration? Slightly different, but you get the idea, right? Another data that just kills you is this. Their total of alumni accounts for like 1 to 2% of the total alumni of universities in any given year. But look at this. About quarter of all the professors, SNU alma maters, right? And did they become professors through exams? No, through appointments, through connections, right? What about nearly 30% of National Assembly members? I'm curious what the proportion is for the national election we had last week, okay? But it'll be definitely above 25%, okay? and disproportionately large number of top positions in the government administrations, most of which are appointed. And last one is the killer. Since the founding of the Republic of Korea in 1948, more than 85% of all the Supreme Court judges have been SNU alumni. 85% from one university. Okay? And what about for the chief judges of district courts? 85.7%. Okay? What about Constitution? Judges of high courts, 82%. And again, these are not based on any specific credentials. They are appointments made by people in higher positions. Okay? So these are all through cronyism, right? And that's why everyone wants to go to SNU. If they cannot, Yonsei and KU. And I'm sorry to say this, but a lot of KU students, they had aspirations to go to SNU. But I don't know if that's the same thing in the USA, for example. I mean, yes, in the ranking, Harvard is number 1, Princeton number 2, but I think you have a preference, maybe because of the campus or the history. And so you would say, oh, Harvard is number 1, but I think I prefer Princeton, right? In Korea, that never happens. It's always number 1, number 2, number 3 in that order. You don't choose number 3 over number 1. Okay, like you do maybe elsewhere that you come from. Okay? And we could partly blame why that happens to this. Because as long as these mindless elites keep on selecting these people based on their alma mater, they're symbolically giving this false message to Koreans, right? That if you want to be recognized, if you want to succeed, you go to SKY, especially SNU. Okay? So there's got to be something that needs to be done, I think. And this is one of the reasons I think Korea has the world's lowest fertility rate. So again, it's the far-fetched idea, but something to think about. All right? All right. It's 6:11, and I'll see you back here at 6:20. Okay, with only 40 minutes to go, I think I'll have to skip some sections, and I think it's okay because at least the lecture notes will not be featured on the midterm exam, right? So the next section is positive consequences of Koreans' strong zeal for education. And the positive aspects are these. Okay? Let's 6 or 7. Okay? The first one is education zeal and well, let's just put it that way. Education zeal led to relatively high educational attainment, and that played an instrumental role in the industrial growth of the country in the last 50 years or so. Okay, so, because of Koreans' preoccupation with education, that there has been no shortage of engineers, scientists, computer scientists, technicians, and researchers, as well as easily trainable workers. Okay? Second is Koreans' relatively high educational attainment has led to various forms of social development, like higher living standards, better health and hygiene, quality of life, and higher status of women compared to the past. Also, education has played a role to help reduce illiteracy rate poverty, inequality, unemployment, human rights violations, and corruption. Okay? Again, if you compare all of these indexes with indexes of the, let's say, 21st century with, let's say, 30, 40 years ago, you'll see a significant improvement, and we owe a lot to Koreans' preoccupation with education. Third, because Koreans are so interested in education, the government had to invest heavily in education. Okay? And what is interesting is this. I don't know if it's the same in your country, but in Korea, the education sort of funding is the same for every student, no matter where he or she lives. Okay? So the student may be living in Gangnam, the most affluent district, or the student may be living in the most economically downtrodden district somewhere in Korea. The education funding for each student is the same. Okay? So there is this sense of equity, and that's why Korea is deemed to have the most equitable public education system in the world. Okay? So this is according to the World Economic Forum, and it looks at three kinds of equity in education: access, quality, and outcomes, and Korea is number one. Okay? So there's something good about Korean education. And, just to get a sense of how much we invested in education, back in 1963, there were 65 students per class. 65, okay? But what about like recently, in 2020, it's down to 21.8, okay? So this is what the classroom looked like in the 1960s or 70s, right? You can see how packed this is, okay? Like 65 students. But that kind of classroom today looks like this, okay? With heavy investment in education, and everything's free, okay? Even books, of course. Fourth positive consequence of Koreans' educational zeal is that, I think I mentioned this earlier, in achievement score in international assessments, Korean students have performed well. And there's only one international comparative studies. It's called PISA. Okay? It's the Program for International Student Assessment by the OECD, and it looks at the achievement level in three subjects, namely reading, mathematics, and science of 15-year-old students. And for example, in the 2018 PISA, it assessed 600,000 students from 79 countries. Korea was ranked 5th overall. Okay? So it looks like this. Mathematics, 7th. Science, 7th. Reading, 9th. Okay? I don't know how they come up with the 5th rank. No, you cannot do an average here. Okay? So that's why it looks funny, but it's the right rank. And which country do you think scored the highest? China. But there is a footnote fact you need to know. It is not based on all of China, just 4 districts: Beijing, Shanghai, Jiangsu, and Zhejiang. Okay? Still, I think China really did well. Fifth positive aspect is that because Koreans are so preoccupied with education And, a lot of them go to private academies. We have a lot of private academies, which means that there are many jobs created by this education frenzy. Okay? It is said that more than 10% of all jobs have something to do with private education. So that's why the Korean government cannot really crack down on private education, because it accounts for a sizable proportion of all the jobs in Korea. Okay? And there are also reportedly over 100,000 private institutes. If you take a tour of any neighborhood, and if you see a commercial plazas, I bet you any money there's not a single plaza without a private institute. Okay? Some buildings, you would have more than half of all the occupants teaching some kind of a subject. Okay? So it's a big business. That's the point I'm making. And it creates jobs. Lastly, with the overall societal milieu in which education is so important, that is intense pressure to excel at school and to enroll in colleges, there is relatively less room for Korean teenagers to engage in antisocial behaviors like crimes, drugs, gang activities, deviant acts. And as you know, deviant acts include a lot of things. I'm not going to specify what they are. Okay? But is it agreeable? I mean, if you walk around, do you see like high school students doing crazy things? Not really, right? At least compared to back in your country. Because I think high school days are the days when you do the craziest things. But in Korea, it's suppressed. Why? You have to study. Okay. All right. Now we turn to negative aspects, and there's tons, right? If I came up with 6 positive aspects, I think negative aspects would outnumber the positive aspects by like ratio of 2 to 1. Okay? But I just, we'll discuss the most important ones. Okay? Now, wow, I'm not going to have enough time. Anyway, negative impact of Korean education zeal takes place at 3 levels. 1, parents. 2nd, students themselves. 3rd, society. Okay? So let's first start with parents. Negative impact of education zeal, parents' sacrifice. First, high rate of students' participation in private lesson, which cost parents a lot of money. Okay? So let's look at what percentage of Korean students take lessons at private academies or institutes. Now here's a question for you. Do you think it's about 20% of all the students in elementary, middle school, and high school? 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, what? Yes, it's more than 80. Isn't it amazing? Just compare Korea with your own country. Maybe in the USA, it'll be about what, 5%? And they're all Koreans. Just kidding. Actually, it's catching on with other Asians, I think. Anyway, it's more than 80%. Here we go. As of 2022, and this is the latest figure. We don't have figures for 2023 yet. 78.3% of Korean students in primary and secondary schools were taking private lessons. This is the highest ever. Okay? And this is the question. Is Koreans' high participation rate in private lesson a recent phenomenon, or has it been always that high? Believe it or not, it's a recent phenomenon. Look at this. In 1980, only 14.9% of Korean students were taking private lessons, but it increased to 21.8% in 1991, 56.9% in 1999, and 73.6% in 2010. So something happened, something terribly wrong happened since, what, 1990s, since the 1990s. Okay? So again, 1980, 14.9, and so it's sort of a gradual, but then it just jumped. And we're stuck in the upper 80s, 70s now, right? And I don't know if that's going to ever change unless we ban private lesson or private education. Again, why that's not a likely scenario? Because too many people are working in this private education industry. It's just too big. Okay? And with our high unemployment rate among the young people, anyway, there's another interesting question. Is the participation rate in after-school private education the highest for elementary, middle, or high school students in Korea? It's one of those fun questions or riddles. See, you say high school, right? Actually, it's the elementary. You know why? See, I can tell you this as an experienced parent. When your child is little, you all think that your child is genius. Because everything he or she does, oh my God. But as time passes, something that you were so amazed at was something that happened to every child. It's nothing special, right? So by the time your child enters high school, you pretty much know where your child stands, whether he has a chance or whether he or she has a chance to aim for sky or the middle level or low level, right? So that's why this reflects whether your parents have given up on you. Okay? So interesting, right? So, and it's been the same since at least from 2007, right? So the participation rate in private education is the highest, or has been the highest for students in elementary schools. Okay? Reflecting parents' high hope. Okay? Misguided high hope. In terms of private education expenditure, for which subjects did Koreans spend the most on? Korean, English, math, chemistry, music, arts, taekwondo. Choose one. You got it. So English has become a commodity. It's a sure avenue for success. And you know what? One thing that distinguishes Korea from the rest of the world? English is taught in every school, probably everywhere in the world, but in Korea, your score in English actually gains your entrance or admission to universities. Okay? It's one of the major. I don't think there's any. I mean, it's a score that really matters in getting admission to top programs in Korea. So this in the order. Okay, English first, second math, third Korean. Okay, second aspect of Koreans' parent sacrifice is the actual spending, right? In 2022, Koreans spent 400,000 won per student. Now, that's an average. And I would say a typical middle-class Korean parent would easily spend like $800, $1,000 a child. Easy. And if you live in Gangnam district and you have a upper middle class income, you could easily spend 2 million won a child a month. That's $2,000. Okay, and sometimes they have this intensive course during the summer. Few million won, few $1,000, easy, right? So just this is just, again, national average. Okay? So you could see how this is from 2007. It's been increasing, and there's no stopping. And I think it'll continue to rise. Okay? And this is, this is the national average, including students who don't take private lessons. Okay? But if you sort of narrow down the figures to those who are actually taking private lessons, the figure is actually over 500,000 won. Okay? So again, this is average, and you can bet any money that a typical parent spends, I would say, especially when they're in high school, easily 1 million won a month. Okay? Spending on private education varied widely depending on the student's residential area. And where do you think? In students residing in which city do you think spend the most money on private lessons? So, very good. And there is this issue where families with high income spend more money on private education, okay? And their participation rate in private education is also higher. So here is a table or figure. I don't know if you can see this, but this is the families with the highest income level. Let's say $8,000 a month. Okay, the students' participation from this upper income family, their participation rate in private education is 88.1, spending over 640,000 won a month. But if you look at the lowest, the bottom, so those earning less than 3 million won a month, their participation rate in private education was only 57.2%, and they spent only 150,000 won, less than 1/4. So you can see, so I would say do away with the figures. I'm talking about the actual like monetary figures, right? What matters is that the families with upper income level, they spend 4 times more than the spending by lower income families on their children's education. Okay? And there's also the impact of on the family life, and I already mentioned this, right? So family vacation is out of question. No dine out, gatherings with relatives. They would sort of do it without the child who is in, let's say, junior high or high school. Can you feel the desperation of the parents? This is like during the Korean SAT. Now, more compelling stuff. How do Korean students suffer from this education frenzy? And first is too much study time. Okay? I mean, you look back at your own high school days. Did you study every day? Did you go to a private institute to study 3-4 hours a day? Did you return home at midnight after studying? Did you come home at 2 o'clock in the morning after studying on a daily basis? But that happens to Korean students in high school. Okay? Although these are just total, I would not say they're believable because they spend more time than that. But it's an average, okay? On weekdays, they spend close to 3 hours a day studying. I'm talking about after school, okay? Saturday, 2 hours and 37 minutes. Sunday, 2 hours and 18 minutes, average. Interesting animation. So you can see how the high school students spend more time studying. So because Korean students are always studying, there are a lot of study rooms, study cafes, reading rooms. So I don't know if you have noticed any study cafes, but if there are many hagwons, there are always study cafes, and they look like this inside. This is inside an apartment complex. I would bet any money that an apartment complex has a study cafe like this for students. Okay? And you pay a fee, and you study in there. This is not in the apartment complex, but in the busy street somewhere. And some places actually serve these snacks and drinks. Oh my God. Oh. Second negative consequence on students is the myriad of private lessons after school. Korean children are pressured to take a number of private lessons, typically 2 to 3, after school on weekdays and weekends. In the past, students, especially those in high schools, used to study past midnight at hagwon. But at least in Seoul, they passed a law where they have to close everything at 10 o'clock. But do you think hagwons abide by the law? No. They'll close the curtain and look as if they are closed for business. They still are in business. But anyway, in the evening, this is what, because there are some areas in Korea, Seoul, where the hagwons are concentrated, right? So this is like at 10 o'clock, let's say. Just rows of sort of hagwon buses, waiting to, and you don't see them, but there are also so many cars driven by parents to pick their children up. You know why this is a crazy picture? This is not a break time. The teacher is actually teaching. Can you see about few students just sleeping? And I asked, university students who are who just graduated, and I asked them, is this a common thing? And they all said yes. And we're not talking about students at some minor high schools. We're talking about students at reputable high schools. Okay? Why do they do this? Because they learned everything they needed to at hagwon. Okay? So they talk about public education in Korea crumbling because of this kind of thing. But what caused it? It's the existence of hagwon. Because students are learning essential things from hagwon. Okay? Ahead, right? So, third, lack of playtime. You may take playing for granted, but when you're children need playtime. Why? They learn the rules of games, rules of life by playing games, having playtime with their friends. So here we go. Having a playtime is a way for children to learn about the world, and learning about the world means so many things, including social skills, emotional training, creativity, language development, body movement, and more. And you can imagine how many children are deprived of this playtime. Okay? I mean, if you go to like a playground, you see a certain group of kids, but anyway, let me just move on. Next is lack of sports activities. Okay? Schools do not really have sports programs. So if you want to have your child like play sports, you actually have to pay monthly fee to private institutes that organize sports activities, whether it's baseball, whether it's basketball or soccer. So the importance of engaging in sports activities include learn the rules of the games, the experience of winning and losing, glories and defeats, etc., all lead to character building. Fifth, lack of time to pursue a hobby or any other interest or self-development. Okay? Does everyone have a hobby or two? But maybe for Korean students, they develop one after they enter university. Because they just cannot have a hobby. Because they have to study, right? I'm making a sweeping generalization, of course. 6, sleep deprivation. Because they have to study, they just don't have enough time to sleep. Okay? So, according to a 2022 study, Korean students suffer from sleep deprivation, and here is the average total sleep time. Elementary school students, 8.7 hours. That sounds not bad. Middle school students, 7.1 hours. High school students, 5.8. And why do you think that's bad? Because according to recommended sleep time of the US government, this is how it goes. For elementary school students, 9 to 11 hours. Middle school, 8 to 10. So Korean students are at the middle school level really suffering from sleep deprivation, right? It gets really worse for high school students. High school students, 7 to 9 hours. Okay? But Korean students, 5.8 hours. Not good, right? Really? Because you were studying? No. Because you were partying? No, I don't party. Okay. 7th, impact on students' mental health. Now, this is a biggie, right? In Korea, students don't have the right to wander or fail. Okay? The parents' obsession and society-wide education frenzy are easily felt by the students, who are believed to suffer from various mental problems, especially by those who are not performing well at school, including all of these. Now, you see, in your country, where you come from, do the students have the right not to be good at school, good in school? I'm not talking about smartness or remember, you see how I try to say good at school? Because it has nothing to do with one's smartness or intelligence. Okay? Because our IQ is similar, right? But who gets to Harvard and who doesn't? It's all about one's circumstances, right? If you are born into a family that has a stable income where your mother is home caring for your homework, and then you have a better chance than being born into a double income family where parents are constantly absent, earning money to put food on the table. Then the child has a less chance of making it successfully, at least in regard to education, right? So anyway, do students or the student-aged population in your country have the right not to be good at school? Yes? Okay. Yes. So, see, I would say many, at least developed countries, I think that's the attitude of not only the teachers, but society, right? You could be good at school, but some may not have an interest, right? But in Korea, if you fail, if you're not good enough, you develop this sense of failure, low sense of self-esteem, okay? Because everything is so focused on education, okay? Education, education, education. And if you're good at something else, you should feel good about that, right? But not in Korea. You have to be good at education and then maybe good at something else. But you cannot be good at something without being good at education, okay? The issue of self-esteem, Korean students' self-esteem is almost solely shaped by their performance at school. Self-esteem is relative because if Korean students who are A students may also feel a sense of failure for not being A+ students. And I'm not kidding. Okay? You may be ranked 5th in your classroom out of 30 students. I mean, you should feel good, right? No, because you're not number 1. Okay? And Korean society is very cruel to students for not doing well at school. One does not have the right to be less interested in education, I already mentioned that. And being good at something else, such as arts, music, sports, hobby, does not really matter. Okay? That's why we have a relatively high depression experience rate of Korean students. A 2022 survey by the Ministry of Education of over 60,000 students at 800 middle and high schools shows a worrisome trend of increasing number of students experiencing depression. Depression experience rate refers to percentage of individuals who felt so unhappy or depressed that they stopped going about their daily activities for 2 weeks in the last 12 months. That's the definition of depression experience rate. Okay, something you feel sort of so bad that you don't do your daily routine for 2 weeks, and you do that in the last 12 months, and let's see the rate. It's gotten better than the rate you see in 2007, but you can see how the darker line is male and this is female. So 33% of female students in middle and high schools, students have experienced depression. Okay? And the rate for male students, 24%. And I don't have comparative figures for other countries, but I think that's rather high, don't you think? Okay? And who could blame them, right? When you're forced to just study all the time and not having time to play or engage in sports or just go to movies or party, drinking Coke, drinking Pepsi as well. All right, last one is the suicide. Okay? The long hours of studying and pressure to enter top universities are causing various mental problems, the worst consequence of which is suicide. In 2021 alone, I already mentioned this, more than 300 youth between the age of 10 to 19 committed suicide in Korea, and suicide has been the #1 cause of death for that age group for 10 straight years. Only country where this is happening. Okay? In other countries, the For teenagers, the number one cause of death is usually drug-related or accidents, including motor vehicle accidents, and in the case of the U.S., gun violence, right? Okay. So here we go. Many studies show that a considerable number of Korean students have suicidal thoughts to begin with. Okay? A typical reason is worries about grades at school and university admission. A 2020 survey shows that nearly 1 in every 3 middle and high school students in Korea thought about suicide. In the poll of over 5,000 middle and high school students, 27% said they had thought about taking their own life in that year. Isn't this just crazy? 27%. Okay? Asked about the reasons of thinking of suicide, number one reason, academic problems. Second, anxiety about the future and career, which is also related to education, right? Because it's about their performance, right? And third, family conflict. Fourth, conflicts with fellow students. Fifth, economic difficulty. I don't know why I'm laughing at that. But anyway, I don't know if I showed you this before, but contrary to what you believe, suicide rate is positively correlated with age, meaning older the age, higher the suicide rate. So the age group with the highest suicide rate is those over 80. 61 per 100,000 population. Okay? But for the 10 to 19-year-olds, it's only 7.1. But you can see how it increases with age, right? Although there is a one minor exception. Okay? So for the suicide rates among the student-aged population, you can see how it has been increasing. It was only 3.8 per 100,000 population in 1983, but as of the latest stat, it has close to doubled to 7.1 per 100,000. So the suicide rate among students is getting serious. Okay? So on that note, is there any question? Yes. I don't have an answer for that, although it's a very good question. And my question back to you is whether females are more susceptible to depression. Okay. Oh. Mm. So it has to do with hormones. Okay. So for the students at Nanjing University, studies have shown that women are more susceptible to depression. And that has a lot to do with different hormones. Yes? Oh, okay. So it is also true that men's mental health issue is downplayed because it's it's considered a women's issue, kind of. Did you have your hand up again? Yeah. Oh, the figures on the specifics regarding the alma maters, it's hard to come by because I think there's almost like a voluntary censorship because it will not go down well with the general populace, right? But we do have figures for CEOs. And among the CEOs, they're definitely overrepresented. Okay? Of the stock listed companies, we do have figures for those. And SNU, number one, followed by, not closely, Korea University alma maters and Yonsei. So it's number 1, 2, 3. But number one by SNU would be number one by far. Okay, thank you and good luck on your midterm exam.